All right, let's do quick introductions. If we would, just go ahead, Chris, give us your name, who you're with, and what you do.
Sure. My name is Chris Seaburn. I work with Colliers Engineering and Design. Deeper into the mic, understood. And my official Rainbows and Unicorns title is I'm an application success manager with the Design Technology Services Group here at Colliers.
Oh, how do you get that out in a business card?
Don't little dot cards. It's all virtual. Just like tap it and you get it. There's no having. Otherwise, I had like a big old 5x7.
So funny. And Russ is with us.
Yes.
Hello, buddy.
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. You did a presentation today.
I did.
How did it go?
I think it went well.
Good.
What everyone
What were you presenting on?
I presented on doing data fusion in real time and, you know, kind of just the way we approach jobs at Langen.
Nice. Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Exposure.
Yes. It was hard to follow your amazing keynote yesterday.
Wow. Come on.
Knocked it out.
Not making me blush.
But please say more.
Go on. So Chris, talk about your position. That's a pretty crazy job title.
Yeah, about 3 years ago. Okay. I'm both a professional land surveyor and a professional engineer in the state of Indiana. I practice more on the technologist side of thing, I guess, of what was in there. So I moved over from the production side back probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Got it.
Colliers is a rapidly growing company, and like all multidiscipline companies, survey usually doesn't feel the love as much as the others, especially on the support side of things that are in there. And I had an opportunity. My passion is to like teach people first principles, right? It's like I can get an army of button clickers, but as soon as software company changes, I got to retrain the army of button clickers. If I can train people how to think through first principles about what we do, that was really my passion for the whole thing. Is like I grew up and I came out of college from Purdue University in '99. Showed up the first day on the job site, and they showed up and they just had the brand new RTK was like the new thing in the world back then, right? So they're like, you had this, right? So I had to figure out how to go survey the world's largest water treatment plant inside of Chicago and open up all those manholes and then map them with the RTK unit. So we figured that out. We got into.
Did you find anything interesting in those manholes?
There is so many interesting things that are not podcast worthy inside those manholes.
No bodies or anything.
No, we did
remains.
We did do a project where we used laser scanning a few years later in Chicago down on the South Shore. It's called the Animal Bridge down by one of the turning basins down there. And we were laser scanning and starting to do excavations down there. And all of a sudden the FBI shows up, the police show up. Apparently it's a popular place to dispose of weapons in the Chicago area. So as they were excavating, we got pushed back, and there were some interesting times in there.
I thought you were going to say Jimmy Hoffa.
Well, we hear he's other places.
Okay.
Exactly. So super cool. So how does TopoDOT fit into your workflows?
Sure. So TopoDOT had a long kind of career of changing areas. So I started off working MBE, doing transportation work in Chicago market, and we pushed as hard as we could to do extraction work with that. I was actually discovered with Paul D. Jacoby. We met at a Leica users conference in 2007. I was working for another company at the time, and he was building a team at HNTB for their incubation center. And the whole idea was to build a research group that was just helping that company go after their design build pursuits. And he was tasked with building up how do we leverage this mobile LiDAR thing that just came out. And I had already had tons of frustrations with like, there's got to be a better way than the incumbent softwares that were out at the time to do the work. So we were just on a mission conference to conference to discover emerging companies. And so I met Ted when he was no TopoDOT at the time. He was pawning off what would become TopoDOT at the conference. He had like a little booth with a little projector. We had some conversations. I'm like,
it's
Paul,
awesome.
You got to come check this stuff out. He's like, nah, man, I don't know. I talked to him. This is not what I'm like, no, give it a chance. So we met. We talked there. We came down to the Regal USA offices probably 2 or 3 weeks later, had like 2 or 3 days worth of meetings. They put some additional tools in, and we were able to start extracting just a crap ton of data right into MicroStation with the incubation center at HNTB. And
how long ago was that?
That was 2009.
Wow.
2008, 2009, back in the day. That's back when like the Optec Lynx was like the new sexy beast out there that everybody was selling, and Regal didn't really have a system at the point in time. It was all emerging technologies. Nobody knew what a trajectory was, let alone how to calibrate one or correct one, and like how do you make survey grade out of this stuff? The Caltrans spec hadn't existed yet. It was all stuff that was there. So Paul sold the stuff, and then I had to fulfill the promises on the back end to come up with the technology picture of how are we going to make this actually happen.
Yeah.
So cool ride.
So Paul's been in the picture for quite some time.
Yeah. Paul.
In one way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Yeah. He grew up static scanning with Nave Newell in Philly in that area and stuff like that, and kind of came out and made the conversion like, hey, there's got to be a faster way than setting up all these times, and setting up all these targets. Mobile mapping, we got to figure this out because it's the only way we're going to do these big projects, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So mobile mapping was a complete crapshoot and a risk at that point in time. Like it's on you to make this work because nobody believes in the technology yet. So we had to make believers out of the world.
Yep. What do you guys got? You want me to keep talking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're so good at it.
No, I'm just
listening.
here for the ride. What's happening
Yeah,
there?
I'm just listening.
Fair enough. So Colliers,
Yep.
you mentioned how they're growing.
Yes, sir.
And Colliers just acquired who in Phoenix?
Not
Hilgard
just
Wilson.
Hilgard
Hilgard Wilson.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, they're growing like crazy. Like when I heard the Colliers bought Hilgard Wilson, I was like, holy crap. That was a big bite
We're
for
doing
the Arizona market.
multiple acquisitions a year. Not all of them surveyed. We're full multidiscipline, so we've got a whole bunch of architects that are coming on board.
Cool.
And it's our group. We kind of, so DTS, if we want to tell that story a little bit, it kind of stands in between production workers, and then you have IT, right? IT sets up the computers. They're supposed to set up the software. You got users supposed to use it and have everything set up, but IT has no idea what the heck we're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
People that are users, especially surveyors, they're not very, let's face it, we're not very technology conversational. We're not friendly with technology. If the data collector doesn't work, we use it for a hammer for the next hub. You know, we ask for a new data collector the next day. Kind of. So we stand in the ground where DTS is a bunch of experts that have subject matter expertise, but software expertise, and they speak technology. And so we really translate what do end users need to IT, and what do IT need from end users, and we kind of make a buffer in there. As much as we can, we try and shield. Why should IT be defining how TopoDOT gets installed on computers? Why should IT be defining how AutoCAD gets used on certain things? And we advocate for like they're like, 20 gig is a huge file. It's like, buddy, 20 gig is nothing. We got to figure out, and how do you get that accessible now to 80 offices through a bunch of different states and stuff like that we have there? Like, how do you share and build this cohesive team where, our strength is that we're regional like this. So where one region's down, we can work share and another region comes up, but there's risks with that. Like, how do you share the data? How do you beat these little cultural tribes of like, well, we practice this way, well, we practice this way. So DTS kind of stands in that gap, and we really try and define what that culture is without being like total asses doing it. It's pretty easy to be a jerk and just rip the Band-Aid off and say, you were going to do it my way. This is the way you do it. And, I've heard it 3 times at the conference, surveyors are stubborn. I grew up in a farming family in Northeast Indiana. So I always said the only person I've met that's more stubborn than a surveyor is a farmer. Right. So, they don't like change, and they grumble about it, and you just put on some thick skin, and you do it right the first time. You let them gripe for 3 or 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, that's okay, which is like a huge compliment. Like,
Right.
yeah. So that's the gig we do.
Yeah. I'm like all over the place, but being a licensed surveyor in Indiana, if I remember right, there was almost like an overlap with engineering and surveying. Like if you're a surveyor in Indiana, there's like certain drainage plans you can do or something like that,
we could
right?
do so much damage as a surveyor in
Yeah,
Indiana
yeah.
on the surveying side for subdivisions. We could do up to 400-foot long force main extensions at one point in time and kind of stuff. So it wasn't even gravity. It was force
crazy.
main stuff. We could do all the drainage and everything else. We could run a complete set of plans through plan commission, everything else, get it signed and sealed. So back in the heyday when I was in school in the early 90s, that was the gig. They had a dual degree program at Purdue where you got your bachelor's in land survey engineering. That was a degree back then. And you got a bachelor's in civil engineering, and you could come out and get signed off. And if you really like tests, I guess I like tests. I don't know. You could get both licenses and come out on the end of the day on that. So
So that's what you got those 2 degrees then from Purdue?
yeah. I went through. It's supposed to be a 5-year program. I stretched it into 6.
Good for you.
Had a little fun while I was there.
You got your master's. Hanging out.
I did get the master's, but that was like 6 years later. I came back. That drew me out of Chicago. my wife was from the region. You've got Chicago background, so the region is that northwesterly part of Indiana. It might as well be Illinois up there, kind of a thing. So she lived there, so I got a job in construction staking. And
In Indiana or in Chicago?
in Chicago, it was in the Chicago.
Who were you
market.
working for?
It was Dynasty Group. It's
Nice.
MBE. We did a lot of work for a lot of the heavy highway stuff. So I got to be blown off of a runway by a Southwest airliner at Midway's. He lined up his engine off the jet blast before Midway was redone, and
Oh,
I was
geez.
straddling a guardrail, and I came home. My wife's like, "Why do you stink?" I'm like, "Because I got a bath and like jet wash." You know, it's there's a bus sitting there at the intersection just shaking back and forth on there, and I'm like hugging the guardrail, trying not to get blown away, kind of thing. I'm on the city sidewalk. I'm not on the air side of the fence. I'm on the street side of the fence, kind of a thing.
yeah.
So
The things you get to experience as a land
there are so
surveyor.
many stories you can share.
Oh my goodness.
Can you take a step back? I want to talk about something real quick about data, and
Yeah.
because I think what you're doing, and we talked a little bit on the last episode we had about data storage and how do you keep all this stuff, especially when you have multiple offices and huge, like how do
Oh,
you keep it all
gosh.
organized? Like, and
It's a fight continually because you get it figured out, and then we acquire another company, right?
yeah,
And then they had their way of doing it, and maybe it's a better way, maybe it's a different way, and you got to manage all that out. But it's a little bit of cloud storage. It's a lot of bit of trying to move our workstations, I guess, into the cloud and testing with that. How does that work? And
how is that going, by the way?
it performs really well. I think we look at the ROI in the end, like how much does it actually cost us to move the data in and out of the cloud? How much does it cost to keep those drives spinning up there versus waiting an extra amount of time to copy stuff? Or, I mean, SneakerNet still works, man. Like the most secure way to ship data is to get a FedEx box and ship that thing second day, get it over to the other office. I mean, when all else fails technology wise, that's what we still fall back to,
Yeah.
but it's there.
Last year when I did a presentation last year and I asked people, I could tell by the look in everyone's eye when I was talking about TopoShare that they weren't using it. And then I was like,
Yeah.
well, hold on a second. How many
Yeah.
of you guys are still using hard? And it was like
It's a lot.
80%. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was we're not using any cloud storage or anything like that. It was kind of surprising.
Yeah, so we use TopoShare. We're consultants, so we by rule have to use everything because whatever our clients need us to use. So
Yep,
we
yep.
use ACC, we use ProjectWise, we use OneDrive. We prefer for specifically our workflows internally, and we're working to share with outside clients. Topo, there's a train rolling by. Hang on.
So slowly.
There is there's a big contingency where I'm trying to push really hard to change our culture to be a TopoShare culture because it is just easier. The LiDAR is one thing, but dude, the imagery, just to manage the imagery without TopoShare is nearly impossible.
So nice.
The ability to use imagery, and that's just a huge benefit to our extraction productivity is getting people used to using rather than like, well, I do extraction and then I just go out to Street View and Google Earth and I'm like, guys,
It's right there.
It's
Just
there.
two more
Yeah.
clicks and you got it.
Look at the
Exactly.
date of your Google Earth, when they're on Street View. I'm like
Yeah.
2 years older than what we're doing. It's changed.
Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, what do you love about the land surveying profession, and what drives you crazy about it?
You're supposed to say geospatial profession.
No,
That's
this
just
old school, the
this time?
land surveying profession, yes.
CTS again? Was it down to
Design
30?
Technology Services. Survey.
Yes, your TTS.
UDT.
That's great.
Oh my God. Look at Russ.
I can hear
We get
AI theme
stickers?
song going for that pretty soon here.
Now my mind is racing. So much you can do with this.
I call it like the slinky factor kind of a thing. Like where I'm at, we've got crews that are just traditional boundary surveyors. Like it's like going to the time machine, and it's great for what they do. It's what their clients want. They're back in 1990s, and they're doing regular boundary survey work, drafting their PDF plats, recording them, and dude, they kill it. They do awesome at it. They're efficient at it. But at the same time, we're out here on the forefront doing, like we were talking earlier on the side, like we've got projects where we go underground with a mobile mapper that is GPS driven for 57 miles, doing subways kind of things. You have to figure out how to solve those problems. And that's like, I do a support call 5 minutes, I'm over here on this end of the spectrum. I pick up another support call, I'm back here on the other end of the spectrum. It's just the mental floss of moving in between those. But what drives me nuts is the resistance to doing things differently to where we still have to make the drafting presentation, but we can make incremental steps that would make our deliverable a native 3D data-driven deliverable, right? So instead of coding randomly like we used to in our data collector, like this is a manhole, it's 4 foot, or this is a fence, it's you got a fence code, and one person puts in it's 4 foot tall woven wire, the other person puts it's a woven wire 4 foot tall. It's like, guys, this thing called GPS that came out, like, or GNSS that came out, or GIS, sorry, get my acronyms right there. We can do these things called attributes where it's a pull down list and it's formatted the exact same way for everybody that collects the data, and it's uniform, and it's actually less clicks for you to enter it this way in the field, but you just have to think differently, be about how you're doing it. And now we can bring it in, and we're even more touchless in processing that from the field to the finished product in there, because the data is already in a format that's going to be automated, right? But that's a huge culture change where, like, if it's not in the field book, it didn't happen. That's the way we're trained as surveyors. And now you're like, wait, now we're not even doing written field books. We still do written field books in our workflows, just to be clear. We do written field books still, but you get the question, and they look at you like the puppy dog head, and they're like, you're making me record this twice. I'm like, yes, I'm making you record this information twice, because sometimes field books files don't make it back to the office. Sometimes data collectors get run over on site, and you lose data kind of things. Redundancy is not a bad thing. But yeah, that's a frustration, and just a lot of the production of like the drawing prep of like, like I understand drafting, I understand the pretty plat competitions and stuff like that, but I got people that want to consume this in so many different ways downstream, and all the effort we put into making that happen, when, you know, a client could be better served by having all these attributes that are naturally part of it. And now that Bentley and Autodesk and all these others are doing direct connectors into ArcGIS that lets this whole ecosystem kind of flow, it's like we're just putting up big wheel chocks or stop blocks in there that prevents the data from moving that way. And it's not intentional, it's just nobody understands the need or has the vision for why you would do it differently that way. And that's the really frustrating part, is how do you get people to catch the vision that it could be a both and proposition, or maybe you don't even, heaven forbid, we have to stop drafting at some point in time and we just make fully digital deliverables at a certain point. That's
definitely.
That's a big one.
Are you incorporating any AI or anything into automating these processes?
We do. We have a lot of conversations going around AI. Call me an early skeptic on like the generative design side of things, and a lot of like the mass automation. What I found is the more AI we incorporate into doing our primary data extraction and work, the more time I need to go through and do tedious QA QC on the back end of it. The bigger chunks of data we chew and the faster we try to run through it, you have to slow down even more to QC that, because it doesn't matter if AI did it or a person did it. Like, in AI realms, 75-80% score of success when you do training algorithms. Hey, that's a really good algorithm on there. If I went and signed a survey and I said, I'm certifying that this is 75 or 80% correct, they're going to roast me.
That's what you do, right?
Or 85% is great if you play in like the asset. There's certain worlds,
right? In asset extraction,
statistically, that's great. Like, hey, out of 90,000 things, I got 80%. Awesome. But design grade, where we got to sign our licenses on it.
Like,
that's why I always, every time I see a vendor and they say they do anything, I'm like, well, what's the QA QC process? Because it sounds like I just have to go through the whole thing again. So at that point, might as well just did it myself at that point.
And that's the full circle of TopoDOT, is the QA QC kind of in place as you are QCing as you're doing the tools, and you don't have to do a lot. You basically just hit enter, accept. Oh, zinger, let's pull that thing in, and ding, 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 and go the whole way through. And then you build a mesh if it's a surface kind of thing, and you let your senior project manager look at the mesh and see if there's anything pointy or upsetting that's on top of that mesh. And it's like, okay, we're good, and send it down the line. So there's building QC steps. Like, we use AI to do a lot of like the dumb stuff, I guess, like things that get in our way that eat up our time, like you were talking about for your podcast prep and stuff like. So there's room for AI in like how we do proposal writing. Like when I do my training materials, like all my training stuff is being more and more AI driven, where I'm just doing prompts, and we're not even recording our own voices now. We like record our own voice, but then we send it through an avatar kind of thing, and it revoices it, and we can do other things that are in there and put the training materials that are out there, and just we're using things where it'll screen record all your screen clicks and then turn it into a slow video. So where it's like, how do we, like for the same thing, like this is the 15th time I've answered this ticket. How am I going to answer this correctly? So we use a little AI software where I go through the solution once, and I can even kind of it turns it into a movie. Then I can do a voiceover on the back end explaining it. We just throw that out on our help desk kind of thing. And then the help desk AI can go off the keywords, kind of put that together and put the whole thing in.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's
Great
how do you,
idea.
how do you scale help? We got 350 people, and I've got 2 people on my team to support Survey Geos.
Oh, wow.
On there.
Yeah.
So we're thin. For the whole company, we're about 3,000 people. We've got about 22 people in DTS that do support for absolutely everything that is in there. So it's a mountain of a problem.
Every time you say DTS, he's going to look at
Down
me
to
and smile.
survey. Yeah.
It was genius.
New sticker coming soon.
Yes, can we please get that? It's a sticker.
What, without saying any names, what's the dumbest question you've gotten on a ticket?
Oh my gosh.
And you can even say that you heard it from someone else at a different company.
There's just stupid things like I can't get licensing or like this whole thing. Well, the biggest one was I can't name that one. That one's too raw still. It's great. It's a little raw still. There's people when they're having a bad day, you got to understand when you receive tickets, somebody's under a delivery deadline and they're under pressure
for a couple hours and didn't get anywhere.
You are their punching bag. It's really, I tell myself every day, it's not meant to be personal. It's just people are having a bad day and you catch people at their worst time. So you got to be better than the people you're trying to help, right?
Good.
That's otherwise you go full Philly on them. We got a lot of Philly people on the team, and there's a whole lot of full Philly that happens in the team's conversations back and forth stuff. But it's like stupid little things where somebody's put in the same ticket 3 or 4 different times, and it all comes down to they didn't connect to the VPN, so they can't see the servers, but they never remember that they have to connect to the VPN to see the license and servers that are on. You, I spent 4 hours not doing anything. Well, I'm sorry.
I feel like I would admit that out loud. You spent 4 hours not plugging in the VPN, connecting to the VPN.
They're like, why didn't you put a note on that told me I need to do the well? Because we get the complaint back that it's too long, didn't read, right?
Yeah, right.
So I wanted to ask you about as far as what AI and survey.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything promising yet for one of the things I was hoping was for specifically map creation, whether it was, any set of plans, but specifically like a survey. If you keep feeding it in what a survey looks like, right? Let's say it's just, what an Alta looks like or whatever. Eventually, just the way it would move things like,
Oh, you're talking about
cheating it.
labeling and stuff like that. Not necessarily the element extraction, but just just the style wise.
Yes.
No, I have not.
Like what I thought would be
that'd be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
That would
learn
be-
every company's thing.
Yeah, you can feed it and just train it on a few PDFs of what you call your exemplary deliverables that would
Right.
be on there. Yeah.
Let's do it, man. Let's get DTS.
Totally DT.
Oh man, I'm creating
The
a
new
monster.
tag.
Creating a monster here. All right, Chris. Anything else you want to get out there before we let you go? Great conversation, by the way. Really enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, there's just appreciate the opportunity. Been listening to you guys since I heard the Abe Lincoln one. I got a buddy that he's like, you should check this out. It was like episode 6 where I jumped on, so I was able to catch up. So yeah, it was fun to watch you guys grow and see the whole program kind of pull together and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's so many stories we could tell. It's like tell your worst surveying stories. It'd be a really fun episode to get like the whole panel of people together. It's like, what's the weirdest, most awkward situation you've ever been in as a survey?
Well, again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Great to meet you and get to know you better. Russ,
You have a really interesting career, and it's when we were talking before the podcast too. We have a lot of common people that we know, as it is in survey world. It's such a small world.
There's other chapters. I did a whole little side track to precision agriculture for a little bit, doing some work in there with LiDAR and automation and stuff like that.
Cool.
So
Like with John Deere and stuff like that.
we were making our own kind of stuff. I mean, we would try and put third-party applications on to make it operate. So I spent like 3 weeks one spring down in Texas ripping up a cornfield because it didn't work. We were trying to avoid the corn driving all over the place. So we bought the corn knowing we were going to rip it up. But yeah, it was a spectacular failure.
Wow.
hey, fail forward.
Fail
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Russ. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Of course.
You're welcome back anytime, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Of course.